obviously you're not a golfer.
I must have drank me about 15 Dr. Peppers.
Congratulations. How do you feel?
I gotta pay.
We have heard the chimes at midnight, Master Romeo.
You're an inanimate fucking object! You told I'm coming! And hell's coming with me, you hear? Who the fuck has the goddamn gall to call his house on a Tuesday night? God!
What the fuck is up, everybody? Welcome back
Yo.
to the latest edition of 3 for 3. I am Mr. Jackson Workman, and I am joined by my two wonderful co-hosts, Mr. Matthew Patterson
Woo.
and Mr. Samuel Holler. And we are back yet again doing the Pan's Labyrinth thing. We are back yet again to talk about 3 movies. And before we do that, I just want to give a special shout out. And just for context, I don't know when this episode is coming out. I've been living up in the mountains in Hendersonville for a little while, and we recently just got butt fucked by Hurricane Helene, and we've been unable to record for about 2 weeks because of that. I only just got my Wi-Fi back a few days ago, so just want to give a special shout out to everyone up here who's been affected by Helene and by Milton down in Florida. I know it's rough, but we got through it. Hopefully the people in Asheville who are still, fucked up and suffering will get through it, and all the people down in Florida. So, it's a crazy ride, but
Breeder pastured.
exactly. But yeah, so this week we have some good ones to talk about. This, I think, so far is the best selection that we've had. I thoroughly enjoyed all 3 movies. I guess we'll go ahead and start with my pick, which was Chimes at Midnight, from Mr. Orson Welles. And for the audience, the plot is it's a Shakespeare movie. It's an adaptation of several different Shakespeare plays, mainly Henry IV and Henry V. And it's about one of the most famous characters from those plays, who is Sir John Falstaff, who is this kind of
Yoji my boss.
say what?
Yoji my boss.
That's right, baby. He
He has pockets.
Yep, he's got all kinds of pockets, and he's a knight. He used to be a knight, and now he's kind of like, past his prime. He's old, he's fat, he's like washed up, he's, kind of a joke, and he's kind of a scoundrel and a thief now. And he is the friend and mentor to the young Prince Hal, of England, who will one day become King Henry V. He's a wayward prince who's fallen in with Falstaff, and his father, King Henry IV, does not approve. And it's about basically their time together. And it's told mainly from Falstaff's perspective. And yeah, this was a movie that I saw for the first time about 3 years ago. Loved it. It's a favorite of mine, and I really wanted to watch it again. And I thought this would be a good one to talk about on the podcast. Because I really wanted both of you to see it too. So this is my first time watching it in about 3 years. And yeah, I already loved it, but I loved it even more watching it a second time. Just absolutely phenomenal movie, one of his best. Out of all the
Really
stuff I've
bad.
been watching this year, Orson Welles is probably more than any other director. He was already one of my favorite directors before this year, but now he's like a massive, massive idol of mine. I've watched most of his movies this year. And so seeing this again was just like, God, you were so fucking brilliant. It's such a great movie. And what did you guys think of it?
It was sad.
It was.
Yeah, I really like the way it was shot. Like
Mhm.
every freaking angle. It's just like, damn, homeboy. I mean, clearly he knows what he's doing. And to your point though, it's also nice because I feel like Orson Welles is one of those directors when you bring him up, people be like, oh, he only made one good movie. And then you get to sit there and now we all get to be like, no, he's made 3, at least 3, because there's Trial and this.
Most of his movies are masterpieces. I mean, I think Five of his movies that I've seen, I count among the greatest movies of all time, including this one. Like this, Kane, The Trial, Touch of Evil, and The Magnificent Ambersons, all are just fucking masterpieces. And and then The Lady from Shanghai is also a banger. So he was a genius, and he's so much more than Citizen Kane, as this movie proved.
There's so
Um,
much texture in this movie that I really like. Like even everything has the depth, but there's also like lines going in different directions from like props being placed in front of the frame in certain aspects and the way it just would move around it. It was great. I
yeah,
was watching it really late at night because I had to watch it at midnight per per the title.
yeah,
And I thought it was gonna be very like, slow at first, but no, it just sucked me in. And
yeah.
just
And like you
fuck,
said,
fuck how.
boy, you should look up my OG review for this movie, which is Fuck King Henry V slash Prince Hal. He's my least favorite king of all time. Yeah, it like you said, Matt, every frame looked gorgeous. The cinematography in this is God tier. It's the same guy who shot The Trial, Edmund Richard, which also had God tier cinematography. Um, it looked gorgeous. The battle scenes, I forgot
Yeah.
how well the battle scenes were shot. I mean, that whole sequence where the big battle on the field was just incredible, especially when you consider apparently there were only about 100 extras in that scene, but he shot it in a way to make it look like it was like an entire army, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, it's very sad, like you said, Sam, because obviously, and this time what was interesting about it was watching it a second time, you know now that he's going to betray him in the end, and that whole I remember the first time I watched it, that scene just, ripped my heart out. It was so sad. And watching it this time, it was interesting kind of tracking the progress of like how he gets to that point. Because I remembered the first time it being kind of abrupt, him turning from like the young scoundrel to like the king who's like, fuck you, forget my name, you know?
Yeah.
But this time I noticed the progress was much more gradual and well layered and just like and such a kind of a crazy ominous foreshadowing moment was that I didn't catch the first time, obviously, because you don't know what's going to happen. Um, when they're doing the kind of mock play where he's pretending to be the king and stuff,
Mm.
um, he says Falstaff says to him at one point, well, if you're going to banish me, he's like, well, if that's what you think about me, why don't you banish me? Why don't you banish all of England and banish Falstaff? And Hal says, I will. And it's like, I was like, oh, the foreshadowing on that. Oh my God. Like, you don't know when you see it for the first time, like, yep, he's going to eventually. And I was like, that's such a great moment. And yeah, so many great, again, just seeing him after they've won the battle, that's kind of where it really starts for him, where Falstaff is giving the big monologue about the drink and stuff, and like Hal just kind of looks at him and just walks away without saying anything. He's just like, yeah, you know what? I don't really want to have anything to do with you right now. Like it kind of starts there in that moment. So noticing things like that was really cool this time around. Um, and yeah, just the whole thing just it was so nice seeing it again.
And the music was great too. I really enjoyed how like energetic it was at times and then also very minimal.
Yeah, the main theme I really loved. Like that they play over the credits at the beginning. I thought that was such a great piece of music. And it's sad because I mean I know Orson Welles considered this to be his best movie that he made. And it's sad because it was the last one that got released during his lifetime. The only thing he made after this was The Other Side of the Wind, which only came out a few years ago, decades after
Oh
they
yeah.
filmed it. Yeah. You'd
Well,
think this would be like, a high point for him that would help get him back on the map, but didn't quite get him there. But
it was interesting. There's one scene that only like I know because of the Other Side of the Wind documentary, which is or Wind, because apparently they lost funding for a bit, so they had to stop production.
mhm.
There was one scene which I didn't even notice in the movie, which I was kind of looking for, and then I kind of got engrossed in it, so I just forgot about it until the end. Was where like I can't remember who. gets like hit or slapped, and the one shot is like a year, and then another year later is the reverse shot of the slap.
Really?
And you have no idea of like what, like you wouldn't be able to tell unless you're like told. But even then, you can't really tell. You just know,
That's
which is
wild. Yeah, I didn't
yeah.
even know that. I would not have guessed. The only major thing that I know is, the little kid who's in a few scenes? Apparently in some scenes that's Orson Welles' daughter.
Well,
And then in some scenes it's a different actor. And I guess at various points throughout the filming they couldn't get her to come back, and so they just got
yeah.
another kid. But
That bitch
which I didn't know until I looked it up after watching it this time. I didn't even notice it was two different kids.
Yeah.
So I guess that says a lot about how well he was able to disguise that. And acting wise, I gotta say, I think this may be his best performance, like as an actor that I've seen. I mean, he's
He's so
just
robust.
I know, and he's just phenomenal. I mean, the way he's ever able to just spit those lines out like it's nothing, because Shakespeare's not easy for everyone to do,
Yeah.
but he just spits them out like they're nothing and just, embodies the character so well. And that's what I think is so fascinating about it is this was a very personal story to him because he was a big Shakespeare guy for one thing, but he himself kind of considered himself to be a lot like Falstaff. And that's why the project was so personal to him, because when you look at it through that perspective, especially considering it's his last movie, it kind of makes it even sadder
Yeah.
because you can see why he saw himself that way. Like, yeah, I used to be this great figure, and now I'm kind of old and fat and washed up, and nobody respects me anymore. And it's like that's kind of how he saw himself, and that's why it was such a personal project to him. But
Hmm.
and it's like, and then at the end when he dies, it's just like, and that was also kind of the death of his directing career as well. So it's even because it's the last movie he made that got released during his lifetime. So, it's kind of sad to think about it in that way. And it's also again just kind of, I remember watching it the first time and thinking that was one of the most interesting aspects of it was just that question they kind of posed at the end of like, they say that Hal went on to be a great king, and the land prospered under his rule. And so it's like that question of like, is it worth all these years of him being a great king at the expense of this one friend of his life? It's like, kind of like, yeah, it's like, yeah, he was a great king and he prospered, but like he also betrayed his best friend and basically killed him. He died of a broken heart.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's like, yes, you could say, oh, it's just one person, but it's like that one person mattered, like a lot. So I always thought that was kind of one of the interesting. It's just fucking terrible. It's just sad.
Yeah. And his choice to be king without him, I think, is like just fucked.
Just fucked
Because
up.
yeah.
yeah, because you know that Falstaff would like give such wonderful advice to him as he's the king and everything, and it helps shape him into being this great king that he is. And I guess that's the point is that he did. But anyway, like I think the lessons he taught him are the values that he brought to his kingdom and stuff. But
I think what were you gonna say, Matt?
I was gonna just bring up that because like it was very personal for him, and so I'm wondering now that if this has anything to do with Bogdanovich and him, because he one of the things he says in the like documentary is like how about like do not betray a friend, like that's the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, which he kind of did. Because I've seen that documentary, yeah, and he kind of did do
Yeah,
that eventually.
and I'm just kind of thinking about it now because of like all the stuff that we're talking about. I'm like, I wonder if this
what
was
was
like
his
him kind of salty about that and
what
Yeah,
saying
did
I
like,
mean that
Peter
hadn't
Bogdanovich do?
Bogdanovich wasn't really directing anything yet at this point when this came out, but it does apply to that situation where in the other side of the wind documentary they talk about how when Bogdanovich started directing, Orson Welles' career as a director had already kind of ended, and Peter Bogdanovich was his protege and close friend, and Orson Welles mentored him a lot, and so Orson Welles was kind of on his way out, and Peter Bogdanovich was really like hitting his stride with like Last
Yeah.
Picture Show and Paper Moon and What's Up, Doc, and he was like firing on all cylinders. And then he made a couple of bombs like Nickelodeon and At Long Last Love, and Orson Welles kind of he went on some talk show and kind of started talking shit about his bombs that he was having, and Bogdanovich kind of considered that a betrayal. And so yeah, it kind of parallels real life. I mean, they made up and they were still friends for a while afterwards, but I know that kind of did hit him hard. But what's
That's
in yeah, it was kind of fucked. But what's interesting to me is like what you were saying, Sam, how those were the lessons that he carried with him. Um, I think Falstaff cared about him more than his actual father did,
oh for
as
sure.
Falstaff, like, didn't care what he did, or he just he loved him for who he was,
Yeah,
whereas King Henry IV was more just like, I only love you if you be what I want you to be. Otherwise, I think you're a disgrace and I don't really regard you as my son. It's not unless you become a regal king that I
yeah,
really love you or consider you a son. And it's like Falstaff was like, I don't give a shit what you do. If you're a king, if you're a scoundrel, I just love you for who you are, man. And that's what's so fucked up about it, why he chooses to reject him. And also just brilliant acting from Orson Welles after Hal has given him the big tell-off and has just left him devastated. That little smile that he gives, where it's just a mixture of just complete and utter despair, but also he can't help but have a little pride. He's
yeah.
just like, oh, you piece, you just ripped my heart out, but damn it, you're gonna be a good king. Like I taught you well. It's heartbreaking. But yeah, I'm glad you both liked it
Yeah,
because
really great movie.
yeah, because I was like, I really wanted to watch it, and I was like, oh, I'd love to hear what they think about it, because that would be, I think, a good one to talk about on the podcast. Um,
Yeah. I'd opened my Criterion collection of this because I had a sealed one and I'd never opened it.
oh, really?
Yeah, that was my first
Fresh.
time watching it, so it was like perfect timing.
Yeah. But yeah, so that is Chimes at Midnight, which you can hear an excerpt from in the theme song to this show. Thank you,
Woo.
Sam, for including that in there. But yeah, so I guess now on to the next, which would be
Fun.
um, let's go with Mr. Holler's pick,
Oh, okay.
which would be Sundown, the Vampire in Retreat.
Cool. So yeah, Sundown, the Vampire in Retreat is a 80s movie that is about, or early 90s, I can't remember. Um about a group of vampires who are in a town called Purgatory in the middle of the desert, and they have found a way to adapt to human life in terms of wearing sunscreen and trying to develop a synthetic blood. And so they pretty much trick this human scientist into coming into this town with his family to help work on this um, blood serum, even though he doesn't know the extent of what's going on in this town. And once they get there, they start to find out that something's not quite right with the people who inhabit Purgatory. And then we get a Van Helsing's descendant coming into town as well, trying to find answers and people. And then once things start to kind of come to a head, that's when we get an all-out war between vampires who believe that they need blood and people who believe that they can adapt to the synthetic way of living with humans. And it's just a good old vampire western. So with tons of people,
Yeah.
tons of actors for no reason, but also great reasons.
Yeah, that's exactly how I was about to describe it, was as a vampire Western, like full on Elmer Bernstein sounding, like, Western rousing score and stuff, which was fun. But yeah, I don't know about you guys, but I thoroughly fucking enjoyed this, like so much more than I thought I was going to.
No,
Yeah, like I thought it was a good time. I mean, I kind of figured it was going to be at least like a good time going in, but at least it was like I really it was like, okay, this is actually a movie I could, recommend to people and not be like kind of like, you know, because I I will say I kind of wanted more Bruce Campbell. It's my only gripe. I
no,
didn't lose.
from the moment that dude was driving in his Jeep and he was spilling his cocaine all over the place, I was like, this dude needs to die.
All right.
And then of course Emmett Walsh just fucking
That was so
whacks his head off.
I was telling Sam before you got on, the day I watched this was I was having just the worst day. It was just a phenomenally shitty day. I was like, I don't feel like watching anything tonight. But at that time, we were supposed to record the next day, so I was like, I have to fucking see this tonight. And I started watching the movie, and then I saw M. Emmett Walsh take that man's head clean off, and my mood drastically changed, and just continued to improve from there. I was like, okay, I think this is I'm gonna have a good time with this. And by the time it was over, I was just like, oh, how delightful. I really needed that. That was just such a fun movie. I really, again, just thought it was my exact kind of just fun goofiness, just I love how self-aware it was. I love how it was just like it was really funny. So much of it was just really funny. Like Bruce Campbell was hilarious. All the actors I thought did a really good job.
I love the animation with the bats
Mhm.
like being tiny and like actual bats and
Yeah.
such.
I love that. I loved like just each of the actors knew exactly no one played it too goofy and no one played it too serious. They all just knew the exact right kind of combination that made the tone of the movie work. I thought that was kind of one of the things that really benefited the movie was it knew exactly the tone it was going for and it really
David was a bad father. I
say
just want to
what?
say that. David was a bad father.
Yeah, I would say
Letting his and husband
a little
literally
bit.
letting the vampire man come in and pretty much try to assault her and then coming in and blaming the kids and her for like why he can't get work done
His wife was raped by a bat. He didn't really seem to care.
here.
So,
But
but
but I
I
did love his like ending revenge line about Shane killing Shane, and then that's why I was like, Rick Grimes loves this movie because Shane fucking
I
dies.
just got that because I saw your review and I didn't get it. Oh, that's exactly fucking why. That's great. But yeah, Shane was just like in The Walking Dead. Shane was a huge piece of shit, and I was extremely happy when he finally died because God, what a hateable character.
Uh,
But what
John Ireland was so good as
yeah, he was
the
great.
like the bloodsucker rather than the symbiote
Hmm.
fake blood.
Yeah, I
And to
love.
clarify, they have wooden bullets. That is why can do these shootouts and whatnot. So
Hmm. Yeah, which I love the idea of yeah, the wooden bullets and stuff like that. That was cool. But it what I love though is like seriously, they get you so attached to each of the characters. I love movies like this where it's like this big kind of ensemble cast and they really I don't know, I felt so even the smaller characters, like every time
they
someone
did
got
John
hit,
Hancock dirty.
say what?
They did John Hancock dirty.
Oh man, I was so mad when that happened. He was one of my favorite characters in the movie, and when he got killed, he was the first one to die pretty much. And I was like, "Oh man, why'd you have to kill the sheriff? That was fucked up." And but every time, like when he died, and when a lot of the other characters died, and when a lot of the even the smaller characters, whenever I saw someone go down, I like felt it. I was like, "Oh
Yeah.
no, they got that person!" Like, no. And I don't know, there
It
were
was
moments like where I genuinely was like, this is really like when they build the big cross, and
yeah.
it kills most of them, but the others don't die, and they're like, we've been redeemed. It's like what a great like moment there at the end. I really like story-wise, just really like that. A lot of great little moments like that throughout the movie where it's like, oh man, I'm really invested in like this character development and stuff.
It was cool seeing oh, what's his name? He was in Twin Peaks.
David
The
Ashbrook.
yes. Yeah, it was cool seeing him just like right before he got on like through into that and
Yeah,
whatnot.
it's funny because most of the actors I didn't recognize, but then there were a few like him and like John Ireland and David Carradine and Bruce Campbell where and M. Emmett Walsh where I'm just like, oh wow, okay, they actually got some big actors to be in this thing. That's pretty wild because it looks like it wasn't the highest budgeted movie ever. So the
Yeah.
fact they were able to get some big actors like that. I mean, Bruce Campbell, he does all the B movies, so I guess that makes sense that he would be in this. But and he was hilarious. Like all of his scenes, just so funny and just so
I love how he just was so like willing to like join for the cause
mhm.
and evolve. Oh, I did not know y'all had a cat, Matt.
Yep, she was bothering me, so I picked her up.
She also wants to join the conversation.
Yeah, she has huge
Like
eyes.
she likes Sundown.
What were your thoughts on Sundown, Cat?
Do something. Say something. Meow. No, she's
Show
so
the
cute.
fangs. Give us the fangs.
Um, yeah, and I think, I mean, it was a really kind of clever plot. I really liked it. It was just like these vampires, like the one side is like, no, we need to live amongst the humans and not be bloodsuckers, and the other half is like, no, it's our natural right to be bloodsuckers. And again, like genuinely great, like when David Carradine is talking to John Ireland and being like, he's like, it's our right, he's like, what makes us special? Like we're parasites. We're no better than like a leech or a tapeworm or whatever. We're just something that feeds off of another being, like you think that makes us special? We're just parasites. And I'm like, damn, that's I've never heard that in a vampire movie before. That's good
Yeah.
shit.
I really like the part when when people would like going by the diner and all the people inside the diner just looking out the window at the humans
That
wanting to
fucking
eat
killed
them.
me. Just that shot of like, yeah, the two of them walking through the town, they're all just pressed up against the window. And then when the two little girls are walking through town, they're like, hi, and every single one of them's like, hi.
Yeah.
Um,
They really built like you got the community that these people were in very easy to connect to.
you know who's a fuckface is the guy from the restaurant who
Oh,
said, I'm just gonna go with them. And I was like, oh fuck you. Just because you're eating a shitty ass hamburger, you want to go and join the other side?
yeah.
People when they give up being vegan. Like,
I
I'm
um,
done.
and I liked that girl who I don't know who that actress is, the blonde chick who worked in the restaurant. She was funny, I thought. She and Bruce Campbell had really good chemistry. I thought that's like when she bit him, I wasn't even upset because I wanted them to be
Yeah.
together, and that was the only way for that to happen. So, um,
I think
but
all around it was just very upbeat and just it kept going, which is really good. I think if it had any moments where it really dragged, it would have started to fall apart a little, but it just was to
yeah,
the point and it
Yeah,
yeah, it knows exactly what it's trying to be. It's not, leaning too hard into the goofiness, and it's not taking itself too seriously. It's like it's that sweet spot where it gets both of those things down very well. It's like, yeah, okay, there are more serious moments, where we're trying to take it more seriously, but also there's a lot of goofiness because we know it's a intentionally kind of goofy comedy B movie. So, I think it did just a very good job of walking that line of just nailing those two things at the same time. And
I agree. I was gonna say it's like the perfect amount of camp. Like, it's campy, but it's like the right amount of campy where you're not, like you said, like walking that line.
and it's intentional. Like it's
Yep.
not like unintentionally like we're trying to be serious, but we're coming off as campy. It knows it's trying to be funny and does a good job of that. Um, and again, does a good job of, I think, I was invested like in like all those characters and really wanted to see them, like when I mean, and a lot of them end up dying. A lot of the townspeople that we've come to know end up getting killed, and it was just like, oh man, every time. I love the three old guys.
yeah,
They all worked together so well. I
their
recognize even
outfits
before I
were
saw
great.
his face, even just with the sunglasses on, I recognized Emmett Walsh by his voice because and I didn't know he was in it, and I was like, oh shit, cool. He's gonna be good. But yeah, thank you for picking that one, Sam.
Yeah. Have either of y'all seen anything else by the director Anthony Wilcox?
Hickox.
Hickox?
Not off the
Um,
top of my head.
I have not.
He
Um,
did Hellraiser 3.
That's
which
the only
I'm
other
thinking
thing I
of.
know. That and a movie called Waxworks are the only things I know he's
Okay.
done.
Which part of the ending of Hellraiser 3 was filmed in downtown Greensboro, and so I kind of
Oh,
want to rewatch it and go to where it was filmed and
I was right by Boxcar.
yeah, right by
I know,
Boxcar. So
yeah. I took a picture of the inside ones for like one of my film classes, and then I got to be like, also, just to let you know, this is the Exorcist building, and they were like, what?
wow.
Cool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was of the three, that was the one I really knew the least about and didn't know what it was
yeah.
going to be going in. So the fact that I
I want to
enjoyed it
see
so much was,
Submerged.
Oh,
oh, Mr. Seagal.
I need to
$10 says
watch.
that's not his hand.
Probably not.
Oh, he also has this movie called Jill Rips.
Oh, same exact poster,
Lundgren?
pretty much.
Yeah.
It is, yeah. Their face with a gun just
Yeah,
photoshopped right in
that
front of
looks
them.
like Dolph Lundgren.
It is.
Um, well,
Yeah,
any more?
I enjoyed it quite a bit. I don't know if I'll rewatch it anytime soon. I don't know if it's one of those kind of movies, but I think if you can watch it out
Especially
there.
for the Halloween season, depending on when it's
Yeah,
coming.
it's one that I would recommend. I want this to be, if it's not already, a cult movie because it
Mm,
deserves to be one.
That is true because I heard about this on Twitter once and that was it. So I don't know if many people know about it. But it was Bruce Campbell retweeting somebody who was tweeting about it. So
Oh, really?
yeah.
yeah, because they were like talking about they're like this little gem with Bruce in it, and he was like, "Thank you for remembering."
Well, see, we don't want it to be as uncommon of a thing that people remember that. We want more people to know about it. So,
Yep.
um, well, okay, I guess we'll move
Right.
on to the last film of the episode, which would be Mr. Patterson's pick.
To be Kung Fu Hustle, one of my favorite movies of all time. That is for sure. It definitely was a childhood movie, and then I'd seen it so much that I stopped watching it.
Hmm.
Um, and then just like in 2022, I think I rewatched it, and I was like, hell yeah, this is a good movie. And then just this time for this one. But the plot is basically the movie is kind of, I want to say it's kind of a satire on kung fu movies in general, but we'll get to that in a second. Basically, it's about the uh I'm trying to get good adjective here, the dangerous axe gang who is running amok in China right now, or in this version of China. All the gangs are not just the axe gang, but they are the leading gang.
Yeah.
They do not mess with the poor like areas because they got no money there, so that's all they want is money. Um, so they kind of get left alone. So there's this peaceful village called Pigsty, in which all these people are kind of living peacefully until a con man, who is played by Stephen Chow, the writer director of the movie, or at least director for sure. I'm sure he wrote some of it. Comes in pretending to be the Axe Gang, inciting the real Axe Gang to show up, and kind of uncovers that this village of peaceful people are actually mostly martial arts experts and in hiding. And the movie kind of just goes on from there, which is kind of just Stephen Chow's character finding himself, uh, albeit, you know, through funny ways and kind of weird ways. But it's a very good, love the movie myself. I don't know. What did you guys think?
I absolutely love this movie. I had heard of it, but I knew nothing about it. And so I went in pretty blind, and it was a journey I wasn't expecting, man. Like when it started, I thought, okay, this is going to be like a martial arts gangster action drama. And then once like the supernatural shit started happening, I was like, oh, this is not going to be what I thought it was at all. Like when she started running around like the Roadrunner and shit, I was like, oh, okay, this is going to be a very different movie than I was expecting in the best possible way. Because like you said, it's not just a martial arts movie, it's a comedy as well. And, I saw apparently there was a quote on the poster from Roger Ebert that says, imagine if Buster Keaton met Quentin Tarantino, who met Bugs Bunny.
Yep.
And I'm like, that's a perfect way to describe this movie. What do you think, Sam?
Um, it was great. It was that time you rewatched it in what early to late COVID time was when I saw it for the first time, and it was just like, what the actual hell did I just get into? And so it was really nice kind of coming back to it and rediscovering parts of it that I had forgotten and whatnot. And the music is wonderful. And I think of the dude who plays the Beast, uh,
Oh, dude, yeah.
Scary,
Sebastian.
scary dude.
That dude is such a good actor.
Yeah.
Like I love him in everything he's in, and it's just really cool to see him just go insane.
Yeah. I mean,
He
the movie
was,
fires on good.
I was just gonna say he was really terrifying.
Yeah. I mean, the movie does fire on like all levels. Like all the comedy bits I feel work. There's very few where I'm like sitting there like, you know,
Yeah.
the action sequences are all so well choreographed and shot. Like my God, the sound effects when they're hitting each other or like, things go on are like crazy. It's, like, but you can still see it. It's not shaky cam. It's like very well like framed action. And it's just a lot of fun too, because like I said, the comedy bits are hilarious. Like one of my favorite things right before the Roadrunner thing, when they're trying to throw the knife at her, and then the one ricochets off the wall into his arm, and then he's like, "You
Yeah.
try." And the other guy just stabs him right in the arm, and
He
then they
stabs
throw
him
the
three
thing, and
times. Yeah.
yeah, and then the freaking snakes, and it's like
Yeah.
every like little bit just kind of builds on itself, and then once it's done, it moves on to the next thing without you even like no pause, no like lull. It's just like on to the next.
And the landlady, the actress who played the landlady deserves a shout out. She was just, especially for the first half of the movie, so much of the comedy kind of came from her, just like yelling at everybody and one over the head and stuff, and just like
Smoking that
she was phenomenal. Yeah, with the cigarette and everything.
Oh, well,
And
like, I'm sorry. I was
oh, go
gonna say in
ahead.
the car when she's in the car, like telling them to go away, and she doesn't say a word. She's just like, like she does like the knuckle crack, and they're all
Mhm.
just like shaking, and then
She's just got her arms around him.
yeah, and then they cut to the husband who's just sitting in the front, and then it's like her in
Yeah.
the back, and it's yeah, he's also really they play off each other really well too, like him running around with all the other meeting all the people, the villagers in the beginning when he's just like harassing pretty much everyone, kind
Hmm.
of in some form or another, and then she just knocks his ass out of the freaking window.
Yeah.
The pot just bink.
Yeah.
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 And like I was saying about Sundown, same for this movie. You get so attached to each of the characters, even the smaller people. Like the three kung fu masters in the village, man, was I sad when they all, died. I was just like, and I was so pissed at the two of them. I'm like, why didn't you fucking intervene sooner? They could have lived.
Yeah.
But and my man, the tailor with the rings on his arms, that was so badass. I love that. Shang-Chi before Shang-Chi. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
The real Legend of the Ten
Exactly.
Rings. But and you mentioned Matt the choreography. And just the fight choreography. I was watching it and yeah, absolutely fucking god tier fight choreography. Like just some of the greatest I've ever seen. And I was watching it and I was like, okay, Yun Wu Ping had to have worked on this. It's too good for him not to have. And I looked it up afterwards. Sure enough, he was very heavily involved in the fight choreography. And I was like, I knew it. He had to be. This was too good. And just the fight scenes in this movie, the last fight scene between him and the frog guy was just like when he does the palm move and everything, and just that whole action scene and him stepping on the toes, god tier. The fight where the landlady and the landlord are fighting him, god tier. One of the coolest, most creative fight scenes I've ever seen in a movie is the scene with the two guys with the instrument, just like, that was incredible. I was like, wow, this is so creative and so well staged and so I was just on the edge of my seat throughout that whole scene, just like every time they would try to get to them and destroy the instrument, they would just get knocked back before they could do it. The rhythm of it was just so, I mean, incredible and like, yeah, just so, and like we were saying with Sundown, perfect blend of action and seriousness and good plot and character stuff, especially with the main character and his whole thing of like only the bad guys win and him having to learn that that's not true. And the funniness, the comedy and everything, like, and the wacky Looney Tunes kind of comedy that they were doing. Perfect blend. I thought it just worked so well. Yeah, just the whole, and it is, I couldn't believe it when I found out that the writer, the director, and the actor were all the same person. Like, that's crazy to do a movie like this and do everything in front of him behind the camera. It's insane.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree with that. Like, because like what I was saying earlier was like it's kind of a satire of kung fu movies ish, but then in almost like most satires, it becomes the kung fu movie, but it becomes a really good one. Like you almost forget that it was like not making fun of, but it kind of parodying things in the beginning.
Yeah.
Because when he like you said the ending when he fights everyone and then the Toad guy, it's they dropped almost all the kind of funny stuff except for the one joke where they're leaning out and they're like, "Oh, he could be a good doctor if he studied." More
Yeah.
like a stuntman, you know.
Mhm.
They still like drop it in there, but it's like mainly serious. And I love the ending too when the frog guy tries to stab him with the twisty thing, and he just grabs it and then turns it and just flicks it off into the sunset. I was like, damn, that was beautiful.
Mhm. And I
Um,
love
It,
the last shot just, was perfect. It wrecked me. Just them reconciling was already, great enough of a payoff, but just that the way it turns to them being the little kids, I just thought that was such a great way to end it and just a good visual representation of just like, you know, we've kind of regained that innocence we had from that time period, and we're just basically two people who just are in love now, and all this other trauma that we've dealt with in the years since has kind of melted away at this point, just a perfect way to end the movie.
yeah, I mean, that yeah, that's like there's I don't know. I could keep talking because I feel like there's something else I was gonna mention about it, and I just slipped my mind. But I do love the backstory between him and the girl, kind of
Mhm.
like as the catalyst. They just drop that in there, and all of a sudden Stephen Chow goes from being kind of like like despicable, not even despicable, kind of just pathetic, to being like, oh, now I
Selfish.
sympathize with him. Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
like, fuck, you know.
It's like you sympathize with him to a point because once you learn his backstory, you're like, oh man, that sucks, that happened to you. But you gotta understand that you can't be a bad guy. That's not right. And he's really being a dick at one point where he like breaks her lollipop and tells the his
it,
his sidekick to kind of go away, and you're just like, dude, stop being such an asshole. Like, come on. But he gets it together and he comes through, which is and man, I'm telling you, the brutality when the Toad guy fucking knocked the lead gangster's head backwards like that, that was fucking crazy.
those are
Um,
a very different movie, but this made me think of a movie called Ricky-O, the story of Ricky, in the terms of like the violence and just like rallying of support for communities led by this main character.
He too like knocks down a wall, doesn't he? In the
Yeah.
movie? Yeah. Yeah, he like knocks down a whole prison wall, I think, if I remember correctly.
So it's just intense punches in that movie, and that's what this movie made me think of in some ways.
Yep. And Jackson, there's if you like this, there's two more movies. One I haven't seen, one I have seen. There's Shaolin Soccer, which came before this, which he references because when his character first shows up, there's the kids playing soccer, and then he
oh
steps on the ball
yeah,
and goes, "No more soccer."
that's
And that was
right.
a reference to Shaolin Soccer, which was
That's
a movie.
funny.
Yep. Which is hilarious. That movie is pretty funny too. It's weird because there are some jokes where you're like kind of similar to Kung Fu Hustle, but like not close enough, but still kind of similar. But similar actors. I think some of the same actors are in it. And then there's From Beijing with Love, which I wanted to see. That was gonna be my choice, but it's on nothing.
Mm.
But
Oh,
I saw a clip from it where this woman's trying to assassinate him, and she shoots the gun, and the gun just fires backwards into her shoulder. And he's like, "What are you doing?" And she was like, "I was testing the gun out." And he's like, "Why didn't you tell me?" And he goes to get her like a bandage. And so she, like he turns away from her. She points the gun at herself to like, because she realizes it shoots backwards and then shoots herself again in the arm. And he's like, "What are you doing?" And she was like, "I was testing it again." And he was
that
like,
sounds very similar to
and he
the
just goes,
knife bit from this one.
"Yep." And then he goes, "Oh no, it's a forward backwards gun. It shoots backwards then or backwards forwards gun. It shoots backwards then forwards." And she just stares at him blankly and goes, "Why didn't you tell me that?" And I don't know why. I was like, I gotta see this.
It's funny, yeah, because I had never heard of Stephen Chow before this movie. And then once I finished it, I was like, who the fuck is this guy? I want to know everything else he's done. And I was looking at his other movies, and I hadn't heard of most of them. The only one I'd heard of was Journey into the West.
Watch
And
that.
I was looking at all of them, and I looked at Shaolin Soccer, and I was like, okay, this seems to be one of his more famous ones. And I found out that the creators of Avatar
Oh,
Mike DiMartino and Brian Konietzko, apparently that's one of their favorite movies, and it was like a big influence on the show. So that made me be like, okay, well, yeah, I want to watch that. And now you describing it to me make me want to watch it even more because I definitely want to see more of his work. I mean, if it's anything like this, then I definitely want to see more of what he has to offer. Because yeah,
Make another movie
what a
now.
treat this was, truly.
Yeah. No, I mean, like I said, it was one of those things where you watch it as a kid and you think, oh, this is just another kung fu movie, and you don't really notice how different it is and like how like actually, not that it's not funny, but like you don't realize why it's as funny as it is. And then now as an adult, I'm like, oh, this is genius, like damn.
Yeah, and like you said, it's kind of like it's not necessarily a satire of kung fu movies, but it kind of is, but not really, where it's like it is making fun of the trope. It's kind of like Scream, where it's like, it's
Yeah.
making fun of the tropes while also kind of doing it at the same time, like it's a loving homage in a way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I did read that apparently there was at least one reference to a Bruce Lee movie in this. It was a Bruce Lee movie I've seen, and I didn't even catch the reference, but where they do something at some point where he did in Return of the Dragon. But so the
I mean, the Shining
references.
reference,
Say what?
the Shining reference they snuck
That
in
was
there.
random as hell. I still don't get why that was there, but I appreciated it.
I was thinking, well, because as a kid, I didn't know it was Shining, so I always thought like, oh, this dude's killed so many people that his jail cell is just covered in blood. But like, I didn't know it was a Shining reference, so now I just get that it was just a Shining thing. But like,
Yeah, I was like,
I was thinking they got all the frogs in the hallway at one point too.
which I didn't catch at first, and then yeah, I was like, oh, they did do that, but what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, when the blood thing, the shining thing happened, I was like, okay, now go find the cell with the guy in the bear costume giving the guy a blowjob.
I mean, that might have honestly fit for this movie.
yeah.
Really, that wouldn't have been like jarring at all. Um, but yeah, thank you for picking this one because yeah,
Uh-huh.
seriously, this was my favorite round of picks so far. But okay, well, I guess we did it. I guess we did the thing yet again.
Yeah.
Glad we could get back together after 2 weeks apart finally.
Return.
It'll be nice to have our regularly scheduled Tuesdays back when we record.
Yeah.
So to avoid this from happening again. But yeah, thanks for tuning in, everybody. Hopefully we gave you some good recommendations this week. I think we definitely did. All three were
Definitely three
bangers.
for three this week.
Yeah,
Thanks
exactly.
for three. We need a
And
bell that we could just like ring, like ding ding ding.
yeah.
We've hit 3 for 3.
That's the 3 for 3, gents.
If it sucks, it's two for three, and there's no bell. Just
Oh, yeah. If we only get to 2 for 3, no bell. Um, but yeah, thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next time. Um, yeah, take care.
Yeah.
yeah.
Keep watching movies.
Hell yes, no matter what.